Welcome to Wednesday Night Live. Welcome to our Haverhill Bradford small group. I don't know if you're watching this at 7 or 7:30. I know that was up in the air, but I am glad to be here with you, whether you're here live with me or whether you're watching the replay. Good to stop in the middle of the week, get some teaching, have some fun, get some community, and we got the best community to do this with. So I appreciate you. Hope you all having a good week. One announcement. Hey, speaking of good friends and good community, Pastor Brian Spicer, hello. You all know you can get a straight hour of being with the pastors. I do 7 to 7:30. Pastor Brian Spicer of Bay State does 7:30 to 8. So if you want some good Wednesday night study and time focused on God and his word and living it out in a practical way, then jump at 7:30. Well, jump when we're done and then go to the Bay State. Layla's here. Hey, Layla. Yeah, so for those of you who are at Brookridge in person, just a note, we are still doing our family meeting this Sunday, the 24th. We're going to integrate it. I'm going to speak shorter, and we're going to integrate the meeting right into our service. So nobody has to do anything differently. We don't have to do anything differently for the kids. Nobody will know what happened, except those of you that are there. But we're planning on doing a barbecue afterwards. We are postponing the barbecue until October sometime. So just get pumped for October. We'll have time to do a Fall Fest barbecue, and it's going to be amazing. So this Sunday, just family meeting, postponing barbecue. All right. That's the only announcement we have. And I will see you on Sunday. So, nice. Speaking of barbecue, the Haverhill Small Group is eating barbecue and listening. You all enjoy that. Good times. Okay. List for this week. Here we go. Ingenious things done by people of the Instagram world. A Lactaid container at an ice cream store. So here's your cone, and here's some Lactaid for you. That's nice. Look at this, a nail polish bottle that comes with a tester nail, so you can see what it looks like on your finger. Look at it. Doesn't affect me at all, but those of you who it does, might be cool to have a tester nail. How about this? Those of you who aren't aware, there's a Barbie movie and an Oppenheimer movie at the same time, and this was somebody's ingenious way of getting somebody to get rid of their trash by picking a movie. I don't know why Barbie won, but anyway. Oh, this is cool. Put a division hint on the bill. I know we always get the tip suggestions on the bill, like 10%, 15%, 20%, but this, if you're splitting the bill up with your friends, they know how much to Venmo you right then, and then you don't have to have that awkward owing each other stuff. Look at that. That's pretty cool. The hourglass stoplight. Like, have you ever sat at a red light and been like, I wonder if this is ever going to turn green again? Maybe not. Maybe. Here you know. The hourglass. Very cool. This is cool. This is in the Netherlands. And when you'd like your server to return, you turn the lit little thing there, and it turns red. Very cool. Doggy bags with a notification that you're nearing the end of the roll. That's very cool. Sort of like the receipts where it gets red dye at the end of it when you're getting close to the end of the roll of receipts. Here we go. A grocery store that has sensory-friendly hours. That's cool, particularly when there are runs on particular items like toilet paper, or now I heard Clorox get hacked, so there's going to be a run on bleach. So stock up on the bleach, people. No, don't stock up on the bleach, but might be in short supply. Look at this, a built-in strainer to the instant noodle pack. Very cool. As if it wasn't convenient enough already. And here there's a Canadian province that has polar bear-shaped license plates. Very cool. This is nice. Evergreen Lake is the source of Evergreen's drinking water. Let's keep it clean. And they give you a nice little cutout there of what the lake looks like and reminding you that you will be drinking that water before you decide to do something unsavory to the lake. Very smart. Oh, this is nice. Hotel that gives you a black cloth. Your intended use for the towel might cause a stain. Nothing worse than going to a hotel, grabbing a white towel, and it not being white anymore. So this is cool. Black cloth. Um, Accessible garden beds. That's very cool. Everybody should be able to enjoy gardening. Uh, oh, see, this is what happens when you use the page down function. I tried. I tried to get away with it, and you can't do it. Right, accessible beds. This is cool. Light switches with the imprint of what they actually turn on. Instead of going to the light switch and just trying all of them, you actually see what each one does. That's very cool, actually. Oh, look at this. No more boring barcodes. Just made it into a waterfall. Nice. I like that. This is a great ad for the pressure washing company. Show you what we can do. I will pressure wash part of this, and then you call us for the rest. Nice. This is a book called The Work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction. That's actually the front of the book. That is not a bunch of books put together. Very cool design. Mechanical reproduction. Very cool. Look at this. It's called a Chef's Kiss birthday cake tool, which can slice, and it has matches for the candles, and it can serve as well. Very cool. There's some smart people out there. Really are. Oh, look at that. Octopus logo with the legs or the tentacles that spell out octopus. This is kind of cool. Some smart people out there, Lynn. There really are. And look at this. A cell phone holder that actually goes against the lock of the door so you don't leave your cell phone in there. I don't recommend using your cell phone while you're in the bathroom, especially a public bathroom. But if I had $1 for every guy that I've seen peeing and looking at their phone at the same time, I'd have a lot of dollars. So this saves you from leaving your phone in the bathroom. The only thing worse than taking your phone into the bathroom is leaving it there. So yeah, ingenious. Very smart people. All right, cool. So hopefully you've been enjoying our study in James. We're getting to the end of it. I said this is going to be our summer series, but it's actually going to bleed into fall. And then we're going to have to figure out what to talk about for the rest of the year. So that'll be fun. I wish there were a lot of other books in the Bible that we could talk about. There are. So we will do that. So we are going to finish up James, though. We have at least a few more weeks on James. And so we're in James chapter 4. If you remember the last couple of weeks, James talking to the early Christian church, but also to us. And he called us arrogant, if you remember that, you arrogant people. And we kind of worked our way through that over the last couple of weeks. And now we are continuing in chapter 4, verse 13. So let's set this up before we go there. Every relationship that we enter into impacts our personal life. And some impacts are greater than others. Like you probably didn't find some dynamic, life-changing shift. Steve Betancourt, hello, my friend. Why can't I? Oh, there you go. Show. Hey, Steve. I canceled my screen sharing just for you, Steve. He's a faithful member of Bay State Baptist, so we welcome all of our Bay State friends. So think about the impacts that people have had in your life. You probably didn't find some dynamic, life-changing shift as a result of meeting your Amazon driver, but the day you met your spouse probably sticks in your mind, right? So some interactions and some intersections with people are more influential than others, but every relationship with another human being leaves an impression. It makes a mark. And some relationships we enter into will touch every single part of our lives. Just in our families, we have people entering into new relationships like husband and wife, parent, child. Those relationships begin to affect every single area of a person's life. And the truth is, that's not shocking to us. It'd be weird if change was not brought about by those relationships, right? If your friend was newly married, and you're like, hey, how's the marriage going? And they're like, nothing's really changed. Hasn't really affected my life all that much. Be like, that's odd. You gonna get some counseling? Or maybe you've talked to a new parent and said, hey, what's it like having a baby? And the response was, I don't really think about it all that much. My life trajectory hasn't been altered at all. I have time on my hands for leisure activities. I get the same amount of sleep. My me time is the same. Finances are about even. You'd be like, I don't think that's a positive thing. I think maybe you should get some help, or maybe something is not going right there in the home. It doesn't seem normal. Why? Because these kind of relationships like marriage and children should impact your life in dynamic ways. We expect that. And if they don't, it's odd. So this is the argument of the book of James. This is James' underlying foundational point. James says if you have an intersection with the holy God, if you've met Jesus, that should impact your life. And it's such a significant relationship that it should impact every area of your life. And it would be weird if it didn't. To be like, yeah, I've entered into a dynamic relationship with the author of all things, the almighty God over the universe, but not much changes really. I'm just kind of doing me, living my life however I want. That would be odd, right? If you've entered into union with God, that should impact everything. And that's James' argument. If you've come to know God, have a relationship with him, it should change the way you talk. It should change the way you treat poor people. It should change the way you handle money. It should change the way you handle conflict. And then today, James is going to say union with God should change the way you make plans for your life. But we know that James tells it straight, right? We've been talking about this all summer. He doesn't say, okay, buddy, this union with God should really change stuff for you, okay? Nope. He says more like a drill instructor. He's like, change your life. Should be different. Don't be adulterous and evil and demonic. Those are the type of the ways that James has talked to us. James gets right up in our face, and we're going to see that today. I'm just going to give you fair warning. So here we are in James 4, verse 13. There it is. He says, come now. And he's going to confront a group of people. Some people read this text in James 4, and they say he's probably talking to businessmen because he speaks of traveling and making a profit. So this is a text for believing Christian businessmen or businesswomen. And there's some truth to that. Like we always want to consider the original audience, right? However, the truth is it's broader than that because James is talking to anyone who would say, like the rest of verse 13, today or tomorrow, we'll go to such and such a town and spend a year there, trade and make a profit. So James says, I'm coming after you if you do this, if you do these 5 things. Number 1, you plan to travel. Number 2, you arrive someplace. Number 3, you plan to spend a certain amount of time at a place. Number 4, you say you're going to do something when you get there. And number 5, you have the audacity to say that you expect to get a certain result. So if you talk like that, James will later on in this chapter call you arrogant and evil. So to recap, James will say if you plan to go someplace, do something and expect a certain result, you're arrogant. That's his argument in this text. It's like, wow, James, all the feels with that one. Very encouraging. Like, all right, I'm gonna get my degree and be a school teacher and love children. He's gonna call you arrogant. I just want to go hang out with my family. He's gonna call you evil for just daring to say that, which is weird because the truth is all of us make plans, right? We all do this. And it sounds like he's in our grill about that. We're all like, this is awkward. I've made plans. I'm actually planning a lot of things. And James is going to say, that's wrong. If you're meeting with God, that should change. So what's going on here? Should I not plan? Is James anti-planning? Nope, not against planning. Is he anti-success? Like I can plan to go somewhere and do stuff, but if I make a profit, I should be like, oh, I'm so sorry, and just give it all away. Is that what he's saying? No, James isn't anti-profit. So what is James all worked up about? Why is he going to accuse us of being arrogant and evil because of what we're doing? Well, he's not mad about what you rose up to do. He's mad at how you talk about the things you're going to do, and not just how you talk about them. It's not so much the words as the perspective behind them. So James is going to take issue with us for making plans and vocalizing them. And he'll say what's wrong is that kind of idea comes from a mind and is spoken by a mouth that's failed to do 2 things. It's failed to take into account a true view of your life, and it's failed to take into account a true view of God. So if you're just stepping out there and saying, yeah, I'm going someplace and doing something and expecting those results, you're arrogant and evil if you haven't done 2 things. Verse 14 says you don't have a true view of your life. And verse 15, he'll say you don't have a true view of God if you've made your plans. So the first issue we see is in verse 14. It says, "You do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? You're a mist, you're a vapor that appears for a little time and then vanishes." So the first failure is if you're sitting down and you're making plans for your life, like what you will do, where you will go. And the problem is you don't know what tomorrow will bring. James says your failure, if you're just talking like that without thinking about it, is that you're failing to see yourself rightly. How do we see ourselves rightly is the next question. That's to understand that you're limited in your knowledge. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You have no idea what's coming. That's true. You don't know if you're going to wake up tomorrow, walk out your door, bump into somebody who's going to be your BFF for life, or you get hit by a bus, right? That might change some things. You don't know. James says you're limited. So for you to think tomorrow will be like today, and I'm just going to continue on this trajectory, for you to be arrogant enough to think that life is going to go how you think it's going to go, you failed to take into account the fact that you don't know. You're limited in your knowledge. You have no idea. But then that's not even his biggest problem with how you see yourself. Really, all that was to build to the next one. And I love the way this sentence runs. Verses 13 and 14 is just one big question. And most of the words are all on the subject. He's talking to you. I'll try to read this how he's saying it. "Come now, you who would say, today or tomorrow we will go into such and such a town and spend a year there and trade and make a profit, yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life?" So, hey, those of you who make plans but don't really know what on earth you're talking about, what kind of life do you have anyway? And that's his real question. Before you start making plans, pause for a minute and just contemplate the quality of your life. And then he doesn't give you a lot of time to think about it. He says, let me tell you, you're a mist, you're a vapor. You're a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. He says, here's what you need to think about when you start making plans: the fact that you're like smoke, smoke that appears literally like it comes into the light. You see it for a second and then it disappears. It's destroyed, it vanishes. So before you start making plans, understand that you're going to plan wrong if you don't take into account the fact that you're not here long. You don't last long. There's a fragility to you, and you have to keep that in mind as you make plans. And that's a reality, right? It's not one that many of us think about a lot. So much of what we build fades. It does. If you don't believe me, just think back to high school. Some of you built the entire empire in high school, right? You climbed the highest mountains. You had your social sphere all set. You had the letter jacket with all the different badges of honor. And then it's over. And nobody cares. For some of you, the fact that high school was over was a great thing because it was a chance to hit the reset button. But others of you might be still processing that loss. It's like, oh, it's gone. I was a big man on campus. I was the girl everybody looked to. Now it's all a waste. Why, God? Because you built something you loved and it's gone. Maybe it was at college. You were on top of the world. And then you see pictures of yourself and you're like, I can't believe I wore that. I can't believe I did my hair like that. And you come to realize that what you thought was awesome, nobody cares about anymore. Why? Because we build stuff and it fades fast. It goes away. You might have built a social network with all your groups of friends back in the day, but maybe now you don't even stay in touch anymore. Things fade and things change. And the reality is the same for my life and your life. James says they fade. But what happens to a lot of us is we lose perspective. We get so fixed on what we're going to do. You're like, I'm going to go to that place. I'm going to trade and make money. We get so locked into that that we forget about our transient nature. This world is not our permanent home. Think about the patterns. We go to college so we can pick a major, so we can get a job, so we can make money and get married and have kids, so they can get a college and pick a major and get a job and make money and get married and have kids, who can get a good education so they can get jobs and houses and family and kids. We're on this trail that we think is awesome. It's like a hamster wheel, but we need to step back and say, hey, wait a minute. James is saying, hold on. All of you are going to die. And you need to ask the question, what was the point of all that? Some of us are so locked into our narrow little worlds that we miss out on what the big story is all about. And James says, don't do that. Yeah, I hear you. James says, don't do that. Don't start making plans without stopping and realizing you aren't going to be here long. Because if you do that, there's a good chance you're going to miss out on what life is really about. Jonathan Edwards, the great Puritan preacher, wrote this resolution while in his 20s. He said, I resolve to think often of my death and the common circumstances that attend death. Very morbid, but it's not a bad thing to think about the end of your life, to consider it. The Puritans did this with their cemeteries. They always put them right in the center of the town. So whenever you walk through town, you'd see the headstones of your friends and family and realize your life isn't going to last long, right? Nowadays, where are most of the cemeteries? You don't even know half the time. We hide them. We hide them from ourselves. We know where the malls are, right? So we can spend and buy stuff because we're living in the now. We forget about the later when we won't be here. Death rate still hasn't changed, still one per person. We're all leaving, and we need to think about what can be said about my life. Not obsess about it, but consider the fact that you will die so that it impacts the way that you live. James is getting all this from his brother, by the way. In Luke chapter 12, Jesus tells the story of a guy who spent all his time building up his money and buying his barns and said, I'll be comfortable for years to come. And Jesus said, you fool, tonight your soul will be required of you. And some people are chasing this little thing that if you died tonight, you'd be a fool because you missed so much about what life is about. James says, don't do that. Don't start making plans without keeping in mind that you won't be here. Let that reality inform what you prioritize. So the truth is, if we just stop right here, like this is the end of the talk, this wouldn't have been a distinctively Christian message. Anybody could say this, right? I could have just played the movie The Bucket List or played the song I Hope You Dance so you could cry and be like, oh, I will dance. We could have all gotten the point. So this isn't distinctively Christian yet, but James isn't done. He's going to say in verse 15, to those of you who are focused on planning your lives out and saying what you're going to do, instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. So number one, you need to see yourself rightly, that you don't last long. And number two, you need to see God rightly. You need to take a look at the Lord. And you need to know two things about him. Number one, it's the Lord who wills, and it's his will that determines whether or not we live. See that? The Lord determines if I live. It's his determination if I continue to exist. That's God's duty. It's his prerogative. You have no control over when you will live or when you will die. You don't, but the Lord does. It's his decision as to when he's ready to stop letting your molecules cohere. If he wants you to keep living, he will allow that. That's completely his call. So it's important to remember as you walk through life, it's the Lord's will that determines whether you live or die. And not just whether or not I live. James also says, if the Lord wills, I will do this or that. So the Lord not only determines whether or not you continue to exist, but he also determines what you do while you exist. Like if you have plans of something you want to accomplish, you will accomplish that only by God's allowance of whether or not he chooses to let you do it. So you don't have enough control to determine, hey, I'm going to get this job. I'm going to build this company. Maybe if God lets you, but not on your own. It's his prerogative. The Lord wills if you continue to live or do this or that. Maybe you have plans and you think, I'm going to do this. Like I'm smart enough. I have the skills to build this job with this company. Well, God gave you the abilities you have to read and think and walk and talk, and he causes your body to continue functioning. You're alive because he wants you to be. And you'll do whatever he allows you to do. It's good to remember that. And it's good to think like that. It's his will if we live or if we do this or that. But James says in verse 16, if you're not putting God into the equation, he says you boast in your arrogance and all such boasting is evil. If you're not thinking about him as you make your plans, that's evil. So it's good for us to think about the reality that life is just a vapor, to contemplate what's on the other side of all this. It's good to think the question, if my life is going to end, what is my life about? Is there a bigger meaning to all this? And James has given us an answer. He says, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. Maybe that sounds terrible to you. It sounds oppressive. The truth is, it's a beautiful thing because James doesn't just say, well, God will determine. He doesn't use a generic term. He says, the Lord determines, the Lord wills. And he points to a name that he had pointed out in the beginning of this book. Remember, the Lord is the person, Jesus Christ. So I hope you're not missing that there is a God, there is a Lord who causes your molecules to cohere and who runs the whole universe by the word of his power. He's the Lord Jesus Christ, and he will determine what you do, and he will determine when you cease to do it. And that could sound like really bad news unless you understand that the Lord is a great leader. Like, it sounds oppressive to say someone else is going to control my life and I don't have any say as to where it's going to go. It sounds awful unless you absolutely trust your leader. There was a miniseries years ago called Band of Brothers, where at the end of the Battle of Bastogne, the 101st is camped outside Foy, F-O-Y, pronounced Foy. I had to look that up. They were called to take the city. And the problem is they had this lieutenant guiding them who was incompetent and he didn't care about them. It was very scary to see somebody who didn't care about the mission they were on and didn't care about them as people he was leading them into battle. As he led them in, he made decisions that were causing men to die needlessly. It was bad. But then their commanding officer did something really brilliant. He replaced the incompetent and uncaring lieutenant with a different one, Lieutenant Spears. And Lieutenant Spears went charging into the battle alone across an open field. He later recalled not only were the Germans firing machine guns at him, they also shot at him with an 88, which is a huge gun. And he was like, I was impressed that they would fire such a large weapon at just one single man. Just the fact that he would pause and think about how impressed he was as he was running across an open field toward gunfire tells you that this was an odd duck. But as he took over the command, he starts barking orders about how they would accomplish their mission. And then he put them in a place where they could succeed. And when his men later described the scene, they said the most interesting thing about that moment was that he gave them the plan. He said, everybody follow me. And then he charged toward the Germans. He never looked behind him to see if anybody was following. They said he just ran out there willing to take the hit for us. And all of them, when they saw he was willing to sacrifice himself for them, they gladly followed him. And the truth is, James will say, the guy who's determining whether or not you live or what you do is the guy who stood up in front of you. He charged into the bullets for you. He didn't just risk his life. He gave his life. And that's the guy you follow. See, the Lord is the person, Jesus Christ, who didn't just reign up in heaven as we dealt with our brokenness on earth. He stepped into our problems. He took on the very form of man. And then he said, there is a mission on this planet that's bigger than making money. It's bigger than anything that we can imagine in our own minds or do in our own little stories. The mission is to see all this sin, all this darkness that's corrupting and destroying lives, to see it all beat back and the kingdom of God return. And he didn't just say, so you guys go do it. Like, be good people, try to make the world peaceful. He said, follow me. And he stepped out toward the enemy. He stepped out toward sin, and he took all the penalty of our sin and our sickness onto himself. He took the hit for us, and he died from it. And then he rose from the dead, and he said, I have beat death, and now I'm calling others to join me, to forsake sin, and to come into right relationship with God through me. And he looks at his kids, his children, you and I, and he says, you follow me. You run in the path that I have for you. Will there be pain in it? Sure. But I can know that it will be no more pain than he endured. And it will be a path that has my best interest in mind because he cares for me. And I know he has the great mission in mind, bigger than just living and making money and collecting stuff. It's the mission of seeing human beings come to know God. That's what I want to do. And I want to follow the Lord who wills, not some random deity who doesn't care. It's the Lord who came and lived and died for our rescue and will bring us one day into eternity in glory with him. So if you don't know him, the reason you exist is you were made by him and for him. And I pray that even today you would cry out to the Lord Jesus Christ, that you would enter into a relationship with him and walk with him for a lifetime. And then for the rest of us, go ahead and make your plans. Get a job, buy a house, build your family, but do it saying, if the Lord wills, I will do this, I will do that, and I will live. If the Lord wills. We get perspective from James today. So yeah, again, glad we get to do this together. Not an easy thing to navigate through, but when we think about the God who risked everything for us, who gave everything for us, that's a leader that we can follow right in the middle of the battle. He already handled everything for us. He already beat back sin and the penalty of sin, and we get to ride with him and ride behind him. So that's a big deal. And we get to do it together. So I appreciate this community. I am excited about celebrating 2022 in our family meeting this coming Sunday. Excited for our network churches and my friends, the pastors of those churches. Really, we have something special here at Brookridge and Bay State and Granite and the surrounding communities. God's going to do something in New England, and we get to be a part of what he is doing. It's a mission to see people come to know Jesus, and we get to be a part of that. So when we make our plans, keep in mind that there's a God who has a big story in mind, that he has parts for us to play in, and we get to do it. So I appreciate y'all. Praying for you. Shout out again to the Hero Small Group. Enjoy your barbecue. Enjoy your night. The rest of you, talk to you soon.